shows Jerry Garcia, John Bonham, and Greg and Dwayne Allman playing the song Jessica on a stage in the parking lot of the Thatcher Woods of the Rosa Parks. Shows Joan Rivers and Leslie Nielsen, each holding microphones, standing in front of a camera held by Helena Hutchins as they stand on a red carpet leading to the Thatcher Woods Fieldhouse. Rivers.
Hello, I'm Joan Rivers, and welcome to the red carpet show before the 1-year SNoTL anniversary show.
Nielsen. And since Joni has lost her voice, I'm Leslie Nielsen, here to help out. And look who we see approaching us now. It's Phil Hartman and Nicole Brown. Shows Hartman and Brown approach Rivers and Nielsen on the red carpet. Nielsen. Phil, congratulations on making it through a year on the show. What do you have to say to those listening in? As Nielsen places the microphone in front of Hartman, Hartman says, other than Joe King, this show is absolutely wonderful. I've had a great time. Rivers turns to Brown and says,
Sweetie, what are you wearing?
Rivers places the microphone in front of Brown, who says,
a red Versace dress.
Rivers takes the microphone back and says,
what's with the red? Are you trying to remind us of something? They already tried the case, right, Johnny?
Shows Johnny Cochran walking by, who tips his head towards Rivers' microphone and says, damn right. Nielsen ushers Rivers away and says, before we further anger Phil Hartman and his lovely date, let's see who else is arriving. Oh, look, it's John Candy. John Candy approaches and waves at the camera. Nielsen, Mr. Candy, what are you excited to see tonight? Candy, well, I heard there's a surprise duo who's hosting the episode. And that's not to be confused with the host of the award show within the episode, that being Johnny Carson. Nielsen, speaking of which, here's Johnny! No, wait a minute. My producer is telling me, I guess Johnny's not here yet. Rivers.
In that case, we are now going to the main stage for a performance by Michael Jackson.
Shows Jackson on the main stage inside the field house. Jackson. It's close to midnight. Something evil's lurking in the dark under the moonlight. You see a sight that almost stops your heart. You try to scream, but terror takes the sound before you make it. You start to freeze as horror looks you right between the eyes. You're paralyzed, 'cause this is Thriller, Thriller night. And no one's gonna save you from the beast about to strike. You know it's Thriller, Thriller night. You're fighting for your life inside a killer thriller. Oh! Applause, applause, applause. Don Pardo over the speaker PA says, welcome to the first annual SNoTL Birthday Celebration Award Show. Please welcome your host, Johnny Carson. Shows Stitch Henderson on the side stage playing the Tonight Show theme. Carson walks out onto the main stage. Applause, applause, applause. Carson. Yes, hello. Welcome to the show. They decided to make it like an award show for SNoTL's birthday because, of course, everyone loves award shows and how long they take and how much they drag on. And even though this show is in honor of SNL, somehow I'm the one hosting. I guess Arsenio Hall is still alive. Me hosting a show honoring SNL. I never thought I'd hear it. In the 80s, Dana Carvey probably started getting stopped on the street and told how much he was loved on The Tonight Show. I don't want to admit how many times I was stopped and told how much I was loved on SNL. However, I guess the producer's first choice to host this award show was actually Jay Leno. Unfortunately, Jay tragically survived his motorcycle crash. No, but get well soon, Jay. We don't need you up here for a while. I got things covered. And don't even think of dying at the same time as David Letterman. I am not going through that again. Anyway, I'm told that the producer's name is King, so we're going to be giving out miniature crowns for the awards. Our first award for the evening is for the hottest female host of the year. Very classy. Please welcome our presenters, Elvis Presley and Frank Sinatra. Applause, applause, applause. As Carson exits, Elvis and Sinatra enter the main stage. Elvis, thank you. Thank you very much. Sinatra, so King, what do you think of these beautiful broads who hosted the show? Elvis, I'm thinking the mighty Foxy, Frank. Shows Jimi Hendrix on the side stage playing Foxy Lady. Hendrix. Foxy. Foxy. You know you're a cute little heartbreaker. Ha. Foxy. Yeah. And you know you're a sweet little lovemaker. Ha. Foxy. Applause, applause, applause. Sinatra. The nominees are Monica Vitti, episode 23. Marilyn Monroe, episode 24. Elizabeth Taylor, episode 32. Farrah Fawcett, episode 53. Katharine Hepburn, episode 71. Olivia Newton-John, episode 99. Anne Heche, episode 101. Brittany Murphy, episode 109. Anna Karina, episode 126. Lucille Ball, episode 152. And Mary Tyler Moore, episode 153. Sinatra takes the card out of the envelope and hands it to Elvis, who says, "Thank you. Thank you very much." And the winner is Marilyn Monroe. Applause, applause, applause. Shows Monroe kissing Chris Farley in the audience. Monroe then walks up the stage, hugs Elvis and Sinatra, and receives her crown and puts it on her head. Monroe. Thank you. I want to thank Joe King for thinking I'm hot. And I want to thank my husband, Chris Farley, for always being there for me. Love you, baby. Shows Farley standing on his seat and dancing in the audience. Applause, applause, applause. Shows Carson on the side stage, who says, "Now welcome two legends who passed away this year. One of them played a parrot in a Disney movie. The other could have bought and sold Disney. Please welcome Gilbert Gottfried and Queen Elizabeth II." Gottfried and Elizabeth come out onto the main stage. Applause, applause, applause. Gottfried. Hey, Liz! How's it going? Doll, you enjoying the show? Queen Elizabeth. I apologize. Did you just refer to me as Liz? Gottfried. What's wrong? Do you prefer Beth or something? Elizabeth. Elizabeth suits me just fine. Gottfried. Whatever. Do you want to read the nominees for Host of the Year? Or do you want me to? Elizabeth. Shouldn't we explain the category first? Gottfried. Well, I have no clue about it myself, so you probably should. Elizabeth. Very well. While this program seeks to treat its host with respect, things don't always go as planned. Therefore, this award is given to the host who had to endure the worst treatment from this program. Gilbert, the nominees, please. Shows Tom Petty on the side stage playing Free Fallin'. Petty. She's a good girl, loves her mama, loves Jesus. America too. She's a good girl who's crazy about Elvis, loves horses, and her boyfriend too. And it's a long day living in Reseda. There's a freeway running through the yard. And I'm a bad boy, 'cause I don't even miss her. I'm a bad boy for breaking her heart. Now I'm free, free falling. Yeah, I'm free, free falling. Applause, applause, applause. Godfrey. The nominees are Miller Fillmore, Episode 2, Amun Ra, Episode 33, Helen Keller, Episode 37, Napoleon Bonaparte, Episode 72, and Charlie Chaplin, Episode 79. Gottfried hands Elizabeth the card with the envelope, and Elizabeth says, and the winner is Helen Keller. Applause, applause, applause. Norm Macdonald walks on the stage and meets Keller, who also walks onto stage. Macdonald accepts the award for Keller and puts the crown on her head. Macdonald. Now, I told myself, I wasn't going to poke any fun at Miss Keller, but she can't hear me anyway. So here it goes. Scott Hall and Macho Man Randy Savage come from behind McDonald and hit him with the chair. Hall drags McDonald off stage, while Savage picks up Keller and places her on his shoulder as he carries her off the stage. Applause, applause, applause. Shows Carson on the side stage, who says, and now, instead of an in memoriam, like they do down there, we're going to have an inadventus as we celebrate the arrival of those who passed away this year. Shows Chester Bennington play One More Light as the following names come across the monitor above the stage as they come out onto the stage one by one. Shinzo Abe, Neil Adams, Ralph Ahn, Tom Alberg, Madeleine Albright, John Alward, Louis Anderson, John Aniston, Clint Arliss, David Arnold, Marion Barber, Luke Bell, Torin Black, John Bowman, Tracy Braxton, Reginald Sonny Burke, James Caan, Gino Cappelletti, Aaron Carter, Jordan Cashmeyer, John Clayton, Maureen Chenevie, Richard Chenevie, Robbie Coltrane, Kevin Conroy, Coolio, Robert Cormier, Zuri Craig, Betty Davis, Len Dawson, Charles B. Dean, Emilio Delgado, Breck Denny, Jeff Dickerson, Joan Didion, Bob Dole, Tony Dow, Shanka Dukare, Jaju, Bobby East, Queen Elizabeth II, Gavin Escobar, Dr. Paul Farmer, Andy Fletcher, Louise Fletcher, Jason David Frank, Bud Friedman, Gallagher, Brittany George, Mickey Gilley, Jean-Luc Godard, Mikhail Gorbachev, Gilbert Gottfried, Les Grobstein, Ray Guy, Mike Haggerty, Philip Baker Hall, Scott Hall, Estelle Harris, Dwayne Haskins, Orrin Hatch, Taylor Hawkins, Ann Heche, Kim Herron, Howard Hessman, Timothy Hill, William Hurt, Chris Huvane, Toshi Ichianiagi, Gregory Itzen, Conrad Janis, Anthony Rumble Johnson, Leslie Jordan, Naomi Judd, Gerda Wiseman Klein, Chesley Christ, Angela Lansbury, Bob Lanier, Pasha Lee, Keith Levine, Jerry Lee Lewis, Ray Liotta, Norman Lloyd, Loretta Lynn, Bruce McVitie, John Madden, Richard Marcinko, Dustin Mays, David McCullough, Bernard McGurk, Meatloaf, Mika Ben, Moses Mosley, Roger Mosley, Tristan Nash, Olivia Newton-John, Nichelle Nichols, Monty Norman, Nolan Neal, Meanie Parker, Virginia Patton, Adrienne Payne, D.H. Peligro, Uma Pemarahu, Maggie Peterson, Bill Plant, Sidney Poitier, Pete Quaife, Gene Ransom, Brian Rich, Harry Reid, Richard Rowe, Kevin Rooney, Mickey Rooney Jr., Bill Russell, Bobby Rydell, Bob Saget, Vin Scully, Jim Seals, Liz Sheridan, Oskana Schetz, Henry Silva, Tony Sirico, Tony Saragusa, Jim Soames, Paul Sorvino, Penny Starr, Ken Starr, Michael Stenger, Trevor Stannard, Alec John Such, Takeoff, Joe E. Tata, Judy Tenuta, Houston Tipping, Jonathan Sharks, Brett Tuggle, Bill Tull, Joe Turkle, Desmond Tutu, Ivana Trump, James Michael Tyler, Vangelis, Jerry Venisi, Dan Vitale, Monica Vitti, Lenny Von Dolan, Jackie Walorski, David Warner, Betty White, and Andrew Wolfork. Bennington. Should have stayed. Were there signs I ignore? Can I help you not to hurt anymore? We saw brilliance when the world was asleep. There are things that we can have but can't keep. If they say, who cares if one more light goes out in a sky of 1,000,000 stars? It flickers, flickers. Who cares when someone's time runs out? If a moment's all we are, we're quicker, quicker. Who cares if one more light goes out? Well, I do. Applause, applause, applause. Shows Carson on the side stage who says, now it's time for some dead presidents. No, Joe Biden is not here tonight. Yet. But please welcome the opposing candidates of the 1960 United States presidential election, John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon. Applause, applause, applause. Kennedy and Nixon come out. Nixon. It's too bad we're not debating tonight. Kennedy. Why is that, Richard? Nixon. Because this time I also have makeup on. Kennedy. Is that what that is? I thought maybe you were getting re-embalmed. Nixon. If they were going to embalm me just to be on this program, I would have resigned. Shows Ray Charles playing Georgia on my mind. Charles. Georgia, Georgia, the whole day through, this sweet old song keeps Georgia on my mind. Applause, applause, applause. Nixon. The nominees for best president of all time are George Washington. Applause, applause, applause. Shows Washington in the audience, who nods solemnly at the camera filming him in the audience, held by Lena Hutchins. Nixon. Thomas Jefferson. Applause, applause, applause. Shows Jefferson in the audience, who confidently nods his head while looking at the stage. Nixon. Abraham Lincoln. Applause, applause, applause. Shows Lincoln slightly smile and tip his top hat towards the camera. Nixon. Theodore Roosevelt. Applause, applause, applause. Shows Roosevelt smiling as he pumps his fist and starts to vigorously clap. Nixon. And Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Applause, applause, applause. Shows FDR smiling as he winks at the camera held by Hutchins. Kennedy. And the winner is, well-deserved the savior of our republic, Abraham Lincoln. Applause, applause, applause. Lincoln walks up on the stage and shakes hands with both Nixon and Kennedy and accepts the crown but does not place it on his head. Lincoln. Thank you. I'm very honored to be bestowed what can be argued is the greatest honor a man could ever receive. To be considered the greatest president in the history of the greatest country that has ever existed, the United States of America. Applause, applause, applause. Lincoln. But I'd be very remiss if I didn't say, however, that I do not agree with the result. Lincoln holds up the crown and says, my vote for greatest president of all time would be for George Washington, because most people in his place would have taken one of these crowns and put it on their head. But because of George Washington, the president works for you, the American people, and not the other way around. And as great as our country is, as all my fellow presidents would attest, it is your duty as an American to continue the progress of making the greatest country of all time even better. John Marshall comes out and stands next to Lincoln. Applause, applause, applause. Lincoln. The first Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, John Marshall, and I wanted to take my time up here to, instead of saying a few more words ourselves, to instead hand over the time to two people who both Justice Marshall and I greatly admire, Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. King and X come out and shake hands with Lincoln and Marshall. Applause, applause, applause. King. Even though we are happy that African Americans have more of a fair shake in America today than they ever had before, that shake is still not yet quite as fair as it needs to be. X. African Americans deserve reparations from the United States government. Period. If you're not black, just picture your ancestors being brought here against their will and being forced to work for free, while the country they were benefiting developed into a superpower. What's right is right, and what's fair is fair. the descendants of those who had their freedom taken from them, deserve compensation from the country that allowed the evil institution to exist. K. And we encourage all Americans to open their minds toward critical race theory, because when, especially those who aren't colored, are forced to view history in the lens of those who were oppressed, it will help explain why there is still more work to be done. Thank you, Mr. President and Chief Justice, for giving us your time so that we may speak. Applause, applause, applause. Richard Pryor comes out on stage and says, "Oh shit, sorry, I was late. I was going to come out here and say a few words with you two myself. But it looks like you two, please, took care of everything already. Thank you." Cuts to Carlin on the side stage, who says, "Thank you, Mr. Pryor. It's much easier following you than those other two. We need true racial justice immediately. Now here's more with Johnny Carson." Oh boy. Anyway, now on the main stage is news broadcasting legend Larry King. I'm told no relation to Joe King. As well as the man who holds two incredible distinctions. One, being the best stand-up comedian of all time, and two, the inaugural host of both Saturday Night Live and Saturday Not Alive, George Carlin. Applause, applause, applause. Carlin: "Hey, Larry, what gives?" King: "What's the matter, George?" Carlin: "I figured as presenters, we were going to get to read out a list of nominees and then hand a crown to the winner." King: "Uh-huh." Carlin: "But instead, we're just introducing a recurring sketch news program." King: "Well, at least I have a history of conducting news programming." Carlin: "Oh, I get it now. You're here because it's news, and I'm here because they hope it's funny." King: "We'll see how that turns out." Carlin: "Folks, we're going to turn it over now to the most often recurred sketch on this show. Let's send it to Charlie Rocket with Weekend Doug Update." Shows on the large monitor above the stage, the Weekend Doug Update studio desk. Shows Charlie Rocket sitting at the desk who says, "Hello, everybody. Norm Macdonald was nominated for an award, and I heard he gave an acceptance speech for Helen Keller, so it's just me here tonight." Buck Henry comes out and sits next to Rocket and says, "And me." George H.W. Bush and Ronald Reagan come out and sit next to Henry, who says, "I'm here with Presidents Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush. We're going to decide once and for all which one of them was actually president and which one was vice president for the other one." Rocket: "Fuck." Henry: "Excuse me?" Rocket: "Sorry, it just slips out sometimes." Reagan: "That's what he said." Bush: "That was a good one, Ron. I guess I'll have to concede I was your VP after all." Henry: "Okay, Norm writes most of my stuff, so that's all I got. Back to you at the show." Rocket: "I actually do have one more piece of news information. Thanksgiving was celebrated 2 days ago, followed by Black Friday, in an unmarked vehicle with no plates. Black Friday was then pulled out of the vehicle by white police officers and tased." Henry: "Well, at least Black Friday wasn't shot. Back to you guys at the award show." Applause, applause, applause. Shows Syd Barrett and Richard Wright playing Pink Floyd's Time on the side stage. Ticking away the moments that make up a dull day. Fritter and waste the hours in an offhand way. Kicking around on a piece of ground in your hometown. Waiting for someone or something to show you the way. Tired of lying in the sunshine, staying home to watch the rain. You are young and life is long, and there is time to kill today. And then one day you find 10 years have got behind you. No one told you where to run. You missed the starting gun. And you run to catch up with the sun, but it's sinking, racing around to come up behind you again. The sun is the same in a relative way, but you're older, shorter of breath, and one day closer to death. Every year is getting shorter, never seem to find the time. Plans that either come to naught or half a page of scribbled lines. Hanging on in quiet desperation is the English way. The time is gone, the song is over, thought I'd something more to say. Applause, applause, applause. Shows Marlon Brando and Sean Connery on the main stage. Applause, applause, applause. Connery. The Pink Floyd song there was our cue that we're short on time. Brando. Nonsense. Did you know that in 2022 alone, Marlon Brando's speech has been redacted for time? Connery. That was truly moving, Marlon. And on behalf of everyone here, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy some jokes from the nicest guy you'd ever want to meet, who happens to have the meanest jokes you'd ever want to hear. Don Rickles. Connery and Brando exit the stage as Rickles comes on stage. Applause, applause, applause. Rickles. Well, gee, thanks, Don and Bond. Can't you see those two staring each other down in a checkers game in a retirement home or something? I can't believe the crazy stuff that happens on this program. Marilyn Monroe married Chris Farley? His dick must be as fat as his gut. Or at least his wallet must be. Every time I see Chris Farley, he starts shaking and laughing and rubbing my bald head, saying I'm his best friend. I'm not your dog, Farley. Thank God, because you're too fat to take me on walks. And Phil Hartman and Nicole Brown have been seen out together. Talk about having something in common. Yikes. And John Belushi, he's here, right? He keeps trying to get me to hang out with him at the Chateau Marmont. That guy is going to reincarnate himself over there one of these days if he's not careful. Gilda Radner is here. Make sure you see her from the front, though. When she turns to the side, she's invisible. When Gilda sees me, she always pukes. I never know if it's just me or if she just ate and she's on her bulimia regimen. Jan Hus is here. However, if she's next to a man, you probably won't find her, as her face will be in the man's crotch. Unless they're serving booze. Then you'll see her make a fool of herself before she blows some guy off. Denitra Vance is here, and I think she even brought her lucky token. After her first episode here, she already had said more lines on it than she ever did on Saturday Night Live. Oh, and don't forget Norm Macdonald. Somehow Helen Keller hates his voice and thinks he's ugly. She can smell that bastard from a mile away. I'm not sure he's a bastard, though, as he was always complaining about his dad beating him up as a kid. So is that why you took the Niners -7, Normie? I'm not sure your dad would be too thrilled. This award show is being hosted by Johnny Carson, meaning it would have seemed old way back in the 80s. However, Ed McMahon is out in the parking lot, listening on a radio and yelling, "Hey-o," to himself. And Joe King, the producer, he sounds like Joan Rivers eating a lawnmower. We'll honor your show, King, as long as you promise to never talk, or I'm going to have to borrow Helen Keller's earplugs. Thank you, everybody. Applause, applause, applause. Shows Carlin on the side stage, who says, "Thank you, Don Rickles. Not to be confused with dill pickles. I know they look alike. Just remember that one is green and the other is a pasty peach color." Now, please welcome two of the greatest professional athletes of all time, including both the greatest and toughest running back in NFL history, Walter Payton, as well as a 5-time NBA champion, who happens to be the only person so far with the distinction of having hosted this program twice, Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant and Walter Payton come out on the main stage. Applause, applause, applause. Payton: "Mamba and I are here to present Breakout Cast Member of the Year, as in who became the biggest star." Bryant: "John Belushi, Gilda Radner, and Phil Hartman weren't considered eligible for this award, as they each already had an argument to be made for being considered the greatest cast member in SNL history, so they can't really break out on this show. In fact, really they can only go down from here." Payton: "Well, maybe if they fall far enough, they can be nominated for this award next year." Shows Kurt Cobain playing In Bloom. Cobain: "Sell the kids for food. Weather changes moods. Spring is here again. Reproductive glands. He's the one who likes all our pretty songs, and he likes to sing along, and he likes to shoot his gun, but he knows not what it means. Knows not what it means. And I say, he's the one who likes all our pretty songs, and he likes to sing along, and he likes to shoot his gun, but he knows not what it means. Knows not what it means." And I say, yeah. Applause, applause, applause. Bryant: "The nominees are Chris Farley." Cuts to a clip. Farley gets up out of her chair, removes her wrestling gear, and exposes herself and grabs her blurred-out crotch and yells, "It's insensitive after my transition to call my former cock a penis. It's a clit now, you insensitive pig." Cuts back to Brian, who says, "Jan Hooks." Cuts to a clip. Carlin: "Oh, look who's coming now. It's Percy." Hooks: "Pussy! Oh, that's great. I love pussy." John Candy comes down the track as Percy the Train. Candy: "Hey, Mr. Conductor, who do we have here?" Carlin: "Well, this is Janie, and she loves you, Percy. Tell him, Janie." Hooks: "Oh my, I've always loved pussy. My mom and dad tried to steer me toward Thomas, but deep down I really still love pussy." Cuts back to Brian, who says, "Norm MacDonald." Cuts to a clip. "Well, back in '62, you know, I was a young farmhand on an all-homosexual bunny ranch. We were basically a bunch of male prostitutes who worked on the farm to stay in shape until some old tycoon would come in for poon, you know. And one day a gentleman came in, some guy who was big in the talking pictures business, came and ordered me from my pimp for a sexual rendezvous. And I took off this fella's pants, but I could tell something wasn't right. He seemed like he was another place entirely. You know, his eyes had a faraway gaze. And since he was gay, it was a gay gaze. And as soon as I began to start jacking him off, you know, the man removed my hand, pulled out a knife, and cut his dick off. and got blood all over me. I, of course, was used to being covered with cum, but never with blood. Cuts back to Brian, who says, and Denitra Vance. Cuts to a clip. Hartman. Okay, how about weekend update? Vance. Oh, Michael Shea was great. He was very funny. And they brought up Ye tweeting. Because I guess he tweeted something about there not being any black people on Seinfeld or some shit. Hartman. That's not what he tweeted. Vance. Well, I don't know what Ye tweeted. They took it down. Hartman. Well, there are news stories that refer to what he tweeted. Vance. I don't trust what they say in the news. What's wrong with you? Anyway, they had Chloe and Heidi out there together as some white moms. And they make a great duo. They were like Ike and Tina Turner out there together, man. Hartman. Ike and Tina. Maybe try Barack and Michelle or Beyonce and Jay-Z. Vance. Don't try to appropriate my comparing of two white women to black couples, white boy. Those two were like Shaq and Kobe together out there. Or Biggie and Tupac. Cuts to Peyton, who opens the envelope, takes out the card and says, and the winner is Chris Farley. Applause, applause, applause. Farley kisses Marilyn Monroe and starts to grope her. He then breaks the kiss and belts out a huge laugh as the crowd roars. Farley gets into the aisle and starts doing cartwheels and breakdancing as he takes a few minutes getting to the stage. Farley finally walks up on the stage and hugs Peyton and picks him up. He goes to hug Bryant, who shakes his finger no, but shakes Farley's hand and gives him the crown. Farley puts on the crown and says, "You like me! You really like me!" Applause, applause, applause. Farley. I'll gladly take this award. This is like the best day of my death. I'm not even kidding. But there's a reason Philly Hartman wasn't eligible. He's like the MVP around here, man. You can't get any better than Phil Hartman. And I think you're all aware that John Belushi is my hero. He'll always be my hero. Being on the same cast with him here is like a dream come true for me. And Gilda's like my new mom. Her and John are like my mom and dad, and Phil's like my mom's new boyfriend. Farley waves and says, "Hi, Mom, Dad, and Mommy's new boyfriend." Shows Hartman, Belushi, and Radner sitting in the audience, hamming it up for the camera held by Hutchins. Farley. What a crazy year it's been on the show, man. A year ago today, I came out during Thomas Jefferson's monologue and told him that I was no longer Chris Farley, but instead Christina Farley. Transitioning into a woman was the toughest decision of my life. I did it all because of Patrick. Cuts to Patrick Swayze in the audience, whose eyes are welled up. Cuts back to Farley, who says, "I loved him so badly. And when Patrick asked me to marry him, I was so happy. But as we approached the wedding, I realized I missed being who I really was and am. And I'm a fat guy in a little coat." And from there I met Marilyn. Cuts to Monroe, who blows a kiss. Cuts back to Farley, who says, "And she made an honest man out of me, real darn quick, I tell ya. It's like la-di frickin' da. You lose a Corvette and get a cruise liner." Not that Marilyn's like a cruise ship or anything, but you get it. So I'm happy to be here on this show, man. And I can't wait till some more old cast members die so we can continue to have a lot of fun. Music indicating Farley is going too long begins to play. Farley. Okay, that's it. Thank you, everybody. Applause, applause, applause. Shows Carson on the side stage, who says, "We still have a surprise duo. of who will be announced as host of the episode. But before we get to that, we're going to have two of the greatest comedians, performers, and men you'd ever want to meet. Please welcome comedic geniuses, Robin Williams and Fred Willard. Applause, applause, applause. Willard. Hey, Robin, could you imagine if there was no heaven? Williams. Are you saying, Fred, that where we're at now is not heaven, but instead hell? Willard. Only for the audience who's still with us, I imagine. Williams. Speaking of imagine, everyone give it up for the closing of our award show, and of course, for John Lennon. Applause, applause, applause. Williams and Willard leave the stage as John Lennon enters the stage and sits on a stool with a guitar. Lennon. Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. Above us, only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for. And no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. A brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one. Applause, applause, applause. Shows Carlin on the side stage who says, "Thank you, John." And live from New York, and dead from the earth, we're not alive. It's Saturday Night Alive, starring John Belushi, Chris Farley, Phil Hartman, Jan Hooks, Norm MacDonald, Gilda Radner, Denitra Vance, and many other special deceased contributors. Musical guest, Irene Cara, and your hosts, Gilda Radner and John Belushi. Ladies and gentlemen, Gilda Radner and John Belushi. Applause, applause, applause. Radner, thank you, thank you. I never hosted SNL. Life goes so fast. But I'm glad to be hosting this show. Belushi, I never hosted SNL either. I'm sure we both would have eventually, had we lived longer. Radner, we think that this show is at its best when it reminds people why Saturday Night Live is a show worth spoofing in the first place. Saturday Night Live is the best television program of all time. Applause, applause, applause. Belushi, Unlike SNL, we record our program ahead of time. We don't do it live. But like SNL, we still have mistakes from time to time, just without the excuse of being live. Oh, and they're all alive, and we're all dead. Radner, John and I both want to thank Lorne Michaels for the amazing times we each had on Saturday Night Live, and for the stars that he helped make us become for all of our fans. Belushi, you're the best, Lord. Applause, applause, applause. Shows Philip Seymour Hoffman is Joe King backstage who coughs loudly. Radner. And yes, we even want to thank Joe King, who has allowed us, Belushi, at least some version of us, Radner. Yes, we want to thank him for allowing some version of us to continue to perform and make people laugh. Belushi, without further ado, Belushi and Radner both begin to sing. They say we're young and we don't know. We won't find out until we grow. Well, I don't know if all that's true, 'cause you got me and baby, I got you. Babe, I got you, babe. I got you, babe. They say our love won't pay the rent. Before it's earned, our money's all been spent. I guess that's so. We don't have a pot, but at least I'm sure of all the things we got. Babe, I got you, babe. I got you, babe. Applause, applause, applause. Radner, we have a great show for you tonight. Belushi, Irene Cara is here, so get ready for some flash dance. Will be